Overthinking, it's not a problem. The problem is allowing your thoughts to stop you from taking action. In today's video, I want to talk to you about how overthinking sometimes can stop you from doing what you actually need to do, and give you some tips that worked for me, an overthinker myself, on how to take action even when you can't really decide what to do in your head. The first thing I do when I notice that I'm overthinking or that I'm ruminating on something, it's that I put everything to paper. I have this habit, this morning habit, which is called, I didn't create it. Some people journal, some people just meditate. I like to do morning pages, which is quite similar to journaling. However, it's something I do without prompt. My only worry when I'm doing that is to just put thoughts to paper without judgment. Just whatever's going on in my head, whatever's worrying me. And I remember I have many journals and diaries and notebooks that I've collected over the years. And I remember that at some point in some of those journals, I would talk about the same thing every single day. And I don't regret it, because that's something that really allowed me to get rid of those thoughts. The moment I would sit down and just write whatever was in my head, whatever was bothering me, feelings, situations, people, anything at all. The moment I put those thoughts down on paper, I was able to see that situation from an outside perspective. I was able even to separate myself emotionally from those thoughts. Of course, that sometimes, some days, right, because I do this every day, some days I would write stuff that would emotionally cause me a reaction, right? I would probably cry or feel frustrated about something. But knowing that I put those thoughts to paper was like 50% of the work, okay? And once I had everything written down, whether in paragraphs or long pages, or maybe just a list, right, of things that were bothering me, I would ask myself, is this a real problem? Because sometimes I think that we suffer more in our minds than in reality. So if you're going through something and in your head, it's like it's a repeated subject, you need to ask yourself, is this a real problem? Because if it's something that it's going to go away in a few days, this exercise is actually really good. You ask yourself, for example, 5 years from now, am I going to still be thinking about this? And usually the answer is no, for majority of our problems. But on the other hand, if you ask yourself this question and you realize that, yeah, this is something I need to deal with, this is something I need to solve, you need to replace this anxiety and overthinking for action, right? And then I stick to the pen and paper and I write down all the possible solutions for that problem. I think that we need to be very practical about the things that we allow to take space in our minds, because we have a limited amount of energy and focus that we can give to things. So if you are constantly thinking about the same thing, you need to be able to give yourself tools and permission to organize your own head, organize your own thoughts, okay? And I mean, but this is the more practical side of things. I know that sometimes we get overtaken by emotions, and I know that some situations in life are extremely difficult, okay? So to be fair with yourself, you can allow yourself sometimes to completely spiral. I remember once, before I went to England, I was really torn because I had just conquered my big girl, big city life. And I had the independence I've always dreamed of. I had the friends. I was living in a nice apartment. I had a lifestyle that I always dreamed of having. But I was at the brink of something greater. I had this opportunity that I always wanted. But I also had something that I really valued and appreciated, which was my life in a big city. And I thought, well, I'm going to England now. What am I doing? And those anxious thoughts. And I remember that at that time, I didn't even had like really decided that I was going to England. I was still pondering. I saw the opportunity and I was still considering it. I wasn't like 100% resolved on doing that. I was still, you know, dealing with that, dueling with that feeling inside me. And when I finally decided to go, I I had this huge feeling of anxiety, of course, because I realized, oh my God, I'm going to take another leap. I'm going to change my life again. I mean, I had been living in this big city for over 3 years, and I just had this realization that I was about to take another jump. And I was frightened. I was scared shitless. Like, I was really asking myself, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And then I called my best friend and I told him all about what was going on. And I remember that while I was on the phone, I knew I had to talk to someone because I was spiraling. And I allowed myself to just let all those fears and anxiety come out. And I was like pacing back and forth by the pool at my building. And I was pacing back and forth and telling him, I'm crazy, I'm insane, what am I doing? I finally got something great and now I'm changing again. I'm going to England. Why am I doing this? Why am I like this? And if I hadn't allowed myself to be faced with that feeling, I would have bottled that up. And I'm the kind of person that I can't bottle anything up. I can't. I can't hold feelings for too long because I'm aware of the damage that can cause to my mental and physical health. So if you find yourself in a very stressful situation that's causing you to overthink, that's taking up a lot of space in your mind, and you feel like you need to have a little mental breakdown, you have permission. Not by me or by anyone, but it's okay to have a little mental breakdown from time to time because you need to let those feelings out. You need to listen to yourself, letting those feelings out so you can look at yourself from a different perspective. Like every time I go through a mental breakdown of sorts, I end up coming out of it with a new perception of my fears, with a new perception of myself, I realize the things that really frighten me and the things that scare me and the things that I sometimes try to push away and try to hide, but that they're very much there. And we need to be honest with ourselves, guys. We need to understand that we're going to be afraid sometimes, and that might lead to overthinking. We're going to be insecure about things, and that might also lead to us overthinking every possible scenario where things could go wrong, where people could be upset. And that's completely normal, okay? But once you've done that, go back to the first step. Put your thoughts to paper. Write it down. Allow yourself to distance yourself from that situation. That's something that usually works for me. And the last thing I want to tell you is that sometimes we're taken over by thoughts because we are scared, right? I was scared of moving to England. I was scared of letting go of that life, but I had to trust life. And being brave, it's not a feeling. Being brave is an action. It's something you do. It's not something you feel. I never felt brave in my life, but I always took brave steps because I moved, I took action in spite of overthinking, in spite of fear. So I guess that's all I need to tell you today, because the idea is basically to give you a way out of this overthinking. You can accept it, you can embrace it. This is just your brain time trying to protect you. This is just your knowledge of life, trying to prepare you for the unknown. But you'll never know what it's like if you don't take a step. You have no idea of the amazing things that you can experience if you don't go. If you stay put, you never know. So take risks, take chances, do things even when you're scared.